Money and You. The story you are about to hear, told by Matthew Browning, is the work of Harold Fiske, monetary scientist. He is to be commended for this excellent effort in the promotion of monetary common sense. Mankind is still bound by old ideas of money and economics. In the midst of plenty, despair and privation abound. Ancient shibboleths prevent people from enjoying useful lives in which they can create opportunities for real growth in a world of abundance. The man in the street is the first to experience the effects which justify the need for that ancient law forbidding usury, a law strenuously upheld in Britain until relatively modern times. Nations and their peoples continue to harvest the bitter fruits of usury, but some, not yet in the front line of misery, begin to see the dire consequences should we continue to sow it. Hopefully exercising their sensibilities in this matter may lead them to take a closer look at the truth about money, and may lead them to press for the full implementation of that law, and with their countrymen experience the great reward to be had in the keeping of it. To this end is this work dedicated. Further encouragement lies in the work of several bishops of the Church of England, in whose book, Christianity and the Crisis, published in 1933, readers are enjoined to insist upon regaining for the community the right to create and control its own money. Moreover, in A Christian Doctrine of Wealth, the report of the Congregational Union of Scotland's Christian Doctrine of Wealth Committee, published by William McClellan of Glasgow in 1962, there is a most convincing indictment of the existing system of debt finance and its destructive influence upon society. Copies of the latter work were sent to the appropriate departments of other churches, including the British Council of Churches, and still there is no evidence of a move to change the financial system. We press on in faith. What follows is part of our continuing effort to teach and persuade those who have an ear. Let them hear.
Rainbow Bridge to Gold. This is the story of the town of Goldville, which settled along a river in a fertile valley, surrounded by an abundance of timber, minerals, and other natural resources that made possible the prosperous and independent growth of this community of industrious people. After a period of growth on one side of the river, Goldville spread to the other side, and a ferry boat provided the necessary transportation. As growth continued, traffic across the river expanded, and the time came when the need for better transportation than ferry boats was evident. By this time, the town's industry had developed to include sufficient engineering and construction capability to tackle building a bridge to span this wide river. The estimate submitted was $10 million, far more than anything Goldville had ever considered for a single public project. The Goldville Treasury had just enough money and income to cover its normal expenses. There simply wasn't any part of $10 million in anyone's combined savings that was sitting around unused and available to invest, lend, donate, or steal. Even so, the sentiment of the community was much in favour of having this bridge, and of course the materials, the technical skills and the manpower were all available. So the only obstacle to moving forward was the lack of money. One of the council members suggested that the town reactivate an old abandoned gold mine located some distance out of town across the river from the centre of Goldville. An exploratory survey was made. It indicated that there was still plenty of gold that could be economically removed from the mine. Two problems appeared. One, a considerable part of the cost of obtaining the gold involved transporting it from the mine across the river to the town vault. And two, the total time required to recover enough gold for the cost of the bridge was estimated to be at least a year. Another council member suggested that if some means could be found to defer paying for the bridge so that it could be built before mining the gold, the bridge could be in service much earlier, and the cost of transporting the gold to the town would be reduced by utilizing the bridge. A third council member suggested that if the town were to issue certificates to represent the gold and to serve as a medium of exchange, that in view of the assurance that an equivalent of $10 million existed in the mine, it would be reasonable for the town, upon establishing its claim to the gold mine, to proceed immediately to negotiate the contract for the bridge and pay for it with the gold certificates. The council liked that suggestion. Still, there was another important matter to consider. How should the community as a whole pay for the bridge? The choice was between a special bridge tax or a toll on the use of the bridge. The issue was put on the ballot, and the people chose the special bridge tax. The bridge tax was made payable only in the gold certificates. So, the certificates were printed and spent for the purchase of the bridge building material and labour as the bridge was being built. It took 3 years to complete. The tax went into effect when they started building the bridge, and the whole $10 million was collected in the same 3-year period that the bridge was under construction. So Goldville had its Rainbow Bridge, as it was named in the opening ceremony, and all obligations had been paid. The town still had its gold mine, but the money it issued against the gold had already been retired from circulation by the bridge tax. The gold had thus served its purpose without being mined, and the council had learned a valuable lesson. It was not the gold in the mine that made those gold certificates bona fide money. It was the tax levy which the law demanded to be paid only in the certificates printed and spent for the bridge. Since then, Goldville has grown and prospered. It has added 2 more bridges across the river, a transit system, an airport, many schools, a sports arena, and several hospitals. After the second bridge, the city council realized that gold certificates were not needed, so they printed ordinary uniform currency for all subsequent projects. The council had discovered the essence of its monetary authority and fiscal responsibility as follows. 1. We can print any amount of money needed for public projects without causing inflation, provided A. There is a practical need for the project and a physical capability to achieve it. B. There is a popular consent to be taxed to pay for the project. 2. We must levy appropriate taxes to collect out of circulation in due course every dollar printed for financing public projects. The town still owns the gold mine, but hasn't gotten round to mining any gold. Goldville is just too busy growing and building the things it needs to serve a growing and prospering community. One rather interesting and unusual phenomenon about Goldville is that it hasn't any public debt. Apparently, the moral of the story of Goldville is that every community should have a gold mine, plus, of course, the knowledge of how to use it effectively.
You have just heard how a good fiscal policy was derived and applied to the conversion of the natural resources of a community through the skills, knowledge, and industry of its people into goods and services for their growth, comfort, and well-being. Lest the skeptic return too speedily to his doubts, he should note it is a historic fact that experiments on these lines took place in Austria and Bavaria during the Depression following the Great War. So also on Gasaba, an island off the Indian coast. All had one thing in common. A community, unproductive and depressed, found itself transformed into an active, happy, and prosperous state in a relatively short time. The success of one such experiment can be seen today on the island of Guernsey, in the buildings of Elizabeth College and the Market House. These, including road and sewage system improvements, were built without putting the community in debt. We must learn that money is not wealth. Government must gird itself with truth and, in the strength of the upright, cease to take out interest-bearing loans, which give to the creditor power over the fortunes of industry and thus of the nation. It must grasp its own fiscal authority, use directly its own credit, and cease to perpetuate the inequity of that power which rules without authority. As in Rothschild's telling words, "Permit me to issue and control the money of a nation, and I care not who makes its laws." Experiments like that on Guernsey in the early 19th century are of great significance in the light of the continuing fiscal ineptitude of governments. Therefore, it is proper to relate again the story of Guernsey's monetary success, which follows on side 2 of this cassette, edited and told by Matthew Browning. We enjoin you to ask yourselves why, with materials, labor, and skills in abundance, our nations are not allowed to create new wealth. Face the answer squarely and act positively on it.